Okay, I am going to work on a sketch for the quilting for a sampler. So I've got a sampler where I've taken 3 solid colors, light, medium, and dark, a tone-on-tone print, a medium print, and a big bold print. And I'm going to quilt this as a sampler. So I have some very thin thread with a light, medium, and dark value, thicker thread with light, medium, and dark, and then 2 variegated threads. So this is a thinner variegated thread that is much more subtle, and this is a thicker variegated thread. I'm sorry, this is a more subtle color change. This has more value change. So the objective is that I'm going to, let's just say that I'm going to start with with this color. I'm going to start at one edge, and I'm going to do a square of quilting on this piece of fabric, and then a square here, all the way down, so that I can see how this color and this thickness of thread reacts to all of these different prints or colors. And not only the color, but the thickness of thread. So you can see that this thread is much thinner than that thread. Maybe you can see it better right there. Anyway, so that's what I am doing with this project that's going to be in my upcoming book. So I have a large pad of paper, and I like to use a sketchbook for quilting that's big, because when I'm quilting, I'm moving, and I'm generally, even if I'm doing something tiny, I'm doing it in a large space. So I want to use a large space. And because I've got 2 thicknesses of thread, I've got a micron 02 and a micron 08. So this is just a bit thicker. And this is just a bit thinner. Not too much, just a little bit. All right, so I need to start by let's say that this is the width of my my squares. That's not terribly square, and I've got 6 fabrics, so I need 6. And what I'm doing is if I'm trying to find where this square is, if I take a right angle from this corner across, that should be squarer than not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when I look at, so obviously I've got kind of colors that, so I started with this fabric, and I found these 2 fabrics, and then I found solids that kind of coordinated with the prints. And I want to do the same thing with my quilting designs. So really, if I look at the prints, that's going to give me some inspiration. I don't really get it inspired by a solid color in terms of type of continuous line pattern. And so obviously we've got circles here, but I also see we've got these points here, curving lines. So I want to kind of use that as my starting point for creating pattern. And one thing that, when I look at this pattern, I think, ooh, I'd really like to come in here and kind of quilt around some of the elements. But if I look at, I'm just doing this much of a square, it can be kind of odd, like where there would I choose to to quilt around. I mean, am I quilting each one of those little color changes? And if my square falls here, am I really going to have space to travel to fill in that square? Because remember, I've got one thread that I'm using, one pattern here, one pattern here, one pattern here, one pattern here, etc. So I want to do one color at a time, and I need to move from pattern to pattern, but I want to keep my edges fairly straight. And so what's cool about this project is that, so we've got one piece of fabric, we've got a bunch of different colors of thread, but one pattern on that fabric. So I think something simple, perhaps like a grid on that print. So I'm gonna put print here, large print. So perhaps I'm just going to do a simple grid where I'm going to come in from the side and just a few lines in one direction, and then lines in the opposite direction. And I am trying to not take my pen off of the surface, because my objective is I'm doing a continuous line pattern. So what this is practicing. All right, so this is a circular print. I can't spell. This is tone on tone. And we've got red. We're going to call that yellow and brown. All right, so I've got these circles that just, they scream to me that I want to, somewhere else I want to do pebbles. I don't want to do pebbles on top of that, only because I think that's a little expected. So what if we do pebbles here? So I ended right there. So then I can come and make a big orb and some small orbs. And I really want to change the scale of my circles as I go, just because I think that makes it more interesting. And when you're quilting and aren't talking into a microphone, you can concentrate a little bit more. And so you can kind of get an idea of how I might move across the surface doing this type of design. And so fill in with, so here I've got cross hatching. Here I've got pebbles. I think another good pattern is a apple core. And so an apple core, you really do need to kind of put in some grid lines, and I will chalk in some. And what you're going to do with apple core is I'm going to start and I'm going to make a C shaping in this direction and then a C shaping in this direction, back and forth. I'm going to travel to this next line, and I'm going to mirror. So I'm not going to do the same thing and go this way. I'm going to do a mirror image. So I'm going to come past the line to the corner, back and forth. And so then travel to the right and do the same thing. I'm going to mirror, so out and in and out and in, and then travel up here. Now how this works is if I work so that this is an out here, then that's going to make a circle, and that's one design. But on apple core, this is going in. So these are out and these are in. So if this is going this way, this is coming this way. So I'm coming down and up and down and up and down, travel. I went up here, so now I'm going down and up and down and up and travel. I went up, so now I'm going down, up, and travel back down. So there is apple core. And just because I love feathers, I think doing feathers would be a good idea. So if I put a feather in, like, we will do a straight spine. So put my spine there. Now remember, this is actually where I want my binding to be. So I want to leave a little margin there. So I'm going to bring my first feather, which is an S, and then a C, back to my spine. Echo that line out. So you see how that's kind of an S shape and a C shape back down to that spine. And an S and a C. Just nice and flowing. Kiss my edge, back to the spine. And I'm going to follow that spine all the way back down. So it's a nice solid line. And back to my spine. S to a C, back to my spine. Reaching out to my edge. And traveling all the way back down. Now I like to echo the outside of my feathers. And in this corner, we have a bit of real estate that we don't want to leave unquilted, so I'm just going to do a little echoing. Travel, and here I just have little points to put in. And the same thing here, just a little bit. All right, so a feather, apple core, pebble, And what I like too is that this is a grid and this is a grid. These are all curves. So here I've got this circular business printed, and I think I think actually that something like an undulating line where I'm coming here and putting in an undulating line. I'm going to fill in this little space there, travel back up here. And I don't have to make every line the same as the one beside it. They can all kind of respond newly to the one that came before. Okay, so undulating lines. And then what about to kind of play up the curves and some of these points? Why don't we do a version of a Zentangle pattern called Cadent? Now, in Zentangle, we've got our paper, and we put orbs into a grid, and then we do an S that comes off of 12 o'clock and ends on 6 o'clock. 12 to 6, and then we turn our paper and we do 12 to 6, 12 to 6. And so you get this great looking pattern that is all curves, but because of where those lines all come together, you get kind of some points. And it's a beautiful continuous line quilting pattern. But obviously we've got to adapt it to continuous line quilting. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to make an S, and at the bottom of my S I'm going to make a little pebble or a circle, come back up to 12, make another S, trying to be the same size, come back up to 12, and there's one line. So now I need to work to the left or right. I'm going to go to the right first, and I'm going to do the same thing. So back up and a circle to 6, my S down to 6, and there's line 2. I'm going to travel over here and do the same thing again to 12 o'clock, S, 12 o'clock. Now I'm going to travel here, and this would only be a partial, and around to 3 o'clock. I'm sorry, that's 9 o'clock. I'm going to land on 3 o'clock, travel to 9, and come off. Travel up. I'm going to come to 9, off at 3, land on 9, off at 3, land on 9, off at 3, and there's my pattern. So I've got 3 that are kind of related in that they're grid-like. I've got curving lines, I've got straight lines. I think that's a nice variety. So again, I'm going to start with one particular color, and I'm going to start at one edge, and I'm going to do one pattern after another and work my way down to the edge. Then I'll change to the next color, and I'll work my way across the quilt. All right. So this is the one project that's going to be included in Adventures in Quilting, Your Fundamental Guide, which is a book that hopefully will be out and available sometime the first part of 2016. Thank you very much.